Hi everyone, my name's Angela and today I'm going to be reviewing the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. If you are on the bookish internet, you have probably heard people rave about this book. I finally read this book even though I was very intimidated by it, and I'm so glad I did. So I'm going to be giving my review today and kind of letting you know if you should pick up this book. Spoiler alert. It's definitely yes. This book is mostly described as fantasy, sci-fi, and climate fiction. This book takes place in a vague future setting where the continents have shifted and the majority or the entirety of the world's population is on this one big giant continent. It is called the Stillness and it looks like this. And people in this world are raised to expect these catastrophic seasons full of natural disasters that kill off many people. And throughout history there have been a number of seasons that have caused a number of disasters, whether it be famine or earthquakes or tsunamis or acid rain or some combination of these things. And people in this world are raised to understand that there is a Father Earth who is evil and essentially wants to get rid of all of the life on Earth, and so people have a very antagonistic relationship to the Earth. And there are a number of civilizations that have left kind of evidence of themselves through these random kind of artifacts or inventions, and so you can really look around and see how many civilizations have failed and have died off. In terms of the magic system in this world, it's not called a magic system, but there are certain people who have the power to quell seismic events and basically stop earthquakes from happening, so they can like manipulate different kinds of energy. But these people are also very dangerous because if they don't have control of themselves, they can cause earthquakes and cause disasters and kill everyone around them. And it is believed that the people with this ability are kind of like the children of the evil Father Earth, and so people hate them. So much so that if a parent finds out that their kid is an origin, which is what they're called, they might even kill the child because they are so afraid of them. And that is what happens at the very beginning of this book. Our main character, Esun, comes home to find her child dead in her home, and she quickly realizes that this probably happened because her husband found out that their son was an origin, and out of some kind of primal fear and hate beat their child to death. She also has a daughter who is missing, and so the beginning of the book is her setting off on this journey to find her husband and daughter, to safely, hopefully bring her daughter home and exact revenge on the father. But this horrific event in Esun's life corresponds with the start of a new 5th season, a new disaster. And so her journey across this continent is even more dangerous than it would normally be. We are also following some other perspectives, but those are not included on the back of the book, so I won't touch on those, but we are moving around a bit. We are not just following Esun on her journey to find her daughter and her husband. So that is the basic premise. That is all you really need to know about this book. I don't know if you can tell from my enthusiasm, but I gave this book 5 stars. I was so dreading reading this book because I didn't want to have an unpopular opinion and hate this book and feel like I was stupid or crazy. Not that if you don't like this book you're stupid or crazy, but that's just how I feel when I don't like a popular book, especially one that's rather intellectual. This was like the only fantasy book on the New York Times Best 100 Books of the 21st Century list, which is kind of crazy. And I think it's because the themes in this book are just so relevant to our current time. If you've heard people talk about this book, you might have heard them talk about how confusing it is at first, or you might hear them talk about how some of this is told in second person, like saying you walk over to the store, you do this, you do that. And I will say that any confusing elements about this book, any answers that you don't have, really pay off at the end. Not that you get every single answer to every world building question you might have in the first book, because this is a trilogy, so that wouldn't quite make sense, but I would say the main things that you are wondering and a little bit confused about in this book pay off so nicely and wonderfully at the end that you just want to go back to the beginning and like skim all the things that you missed and read them in a new light. This is so unlike any other fantasy book that I've read. It doesn't have the same kind of high action political intrigue plot that a lot of fantasy books do. It's such an interesting combination of one woman's very specific situation and then the much larger situation of this new 5th season starting up and wreaking havoc on the people of this land. And of course, reading this, you're also wondering, how did we get here from ostensibly like where we are in reality to this future apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic world in which there are these disastrous seasons and nothing is called anything familiar to what we know. How did we get here? Why did all of this happen? And I think for me that was one of the most fascinating parts about this book. Also just learning gradually over time how this society works and getting little pieces of history and law and how everyone is governed. I've actually already started the second book. I don't even own it, but I got it from my library and I immediately jumped into it even though I had other reading plans. That's how much I just wanted to know what's going on. If you want to read this book but you're intimidated, I would highly recommend getting the audiobook and then following along with your eyeballs if you can. I felt like the audiobook narrator did such a good job at reading this book in a way that really complemented the writing style. I mean, that's what audiobook narrators do. But I thought it was really good. I mean, there wasn't anything like dramatic about the audiobook. Like, it's not a full cast. There's no like extra elements, and I thought that the way that she acted really complemented the writing style. Don't be afraid to read this a little slowly, especially at first. And then once you get into it, you can, speed up the audiobook to your regular speed. I'll be honest, after the prologue, I was really worried that I was gonna hate this because I was so confused, but I promise the rest of the book is not that confusing. And in fact, you'll probably want to go back and reread the prologue once you reach the end of the book. The world building is not done in an info dumpy style most of the time, so it's really like you are using context clues to figure out what everything means, or you're understanding through conversations that characters are having with each other. It's not just the narrator or the author giving you definitions of everything every few pages. But if you really hate that and you don't like being a little bit out of the loop or confused or just having to use context clues, there is an appendix in the back which gives definitions to pretty much every world building term that you could think of, which I think is a great idea, and I definitely used it a couple times, so highly recommend that strategy if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. Overall, I loved this book. I think it's very unique and it's hard to explain, it's hard to capture in a review how this book feels, so I would highly recommend that you try it out. I am so excited to read the rest of the series and see how everything plays out and learn more about the world and the lore and the secrets that are being kept from our main characters. Let me know any of your thoughts about this book, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely week, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more bookish content from me.